Question from Mark. I'm considering converting to tubeless tyres on my gravel bike. I know Nick loves them, but it also seems like they just don't work for some people. In the hope of eliminating user error, I'd love to know, in his experience, what are the most common tubeless setup and user errors people are making?
So, tubeless is a weird one. The problem with it is it's been very dominant in mountain bike for years and years and years. I mean, I remember doing it when I was a kid. But for road and for gravel, everything has gotten massively better over the last 3 years. So most people saying they have problems with it tend to either have one of the three: old tires, old wheels, or old sealant. All of that's massively improved over the last 3 years.
When you say old, you just mean...
developed before technology slightly caught on. It is
so like the equivalent of having like an iPhone 8 versus an iPhone 15.
Exactly. So it's nothing wrong with it, and it can work. And there'll be loads of people that have made it work, but that's essentially getting the golden triangle right of sealant tires and wheels.
Yeah.
So the problem is going to be size of the tires, size of the wheels, and then how strong the sealant is in terms of sealing above a set PSI. So for gravel generally and mountain bikes, you run really low pressures, below 40 usually.
You always shout at me for running too high a pressure on my tubeless setups.
For road, you generally run higher. I know hookless is different, but we'll ignore that for a minute and just go off the basis of generally at 60 PSI and above for road. Most sealants won't work for that, or never used to. But there's a lot of new stuff and technology that's come out over the last few years that's improved that. So we still see tires coming to the shop where it's older stuff, and we struggle to set them up tubeless. And generally speaking, it's going to be the tires slightly too loose and the wheel is slightly too small. So they started this new thing called the ERTO standard, ERTO, and most of the manufacturers now are building the wheels to that standard, making everything easier. So what I would say is if you're going to do it at home, the first thing is get your tire on the wheel without any sealant and see if you can seat it on first before you do it. So like essentially dry seating.
So seating is basically getting the bead of the tire into the nubbin of the rim.
Yeah. If it's dry seating properly, then you know it's going to work. Then you can throw your sealant in and it's easy. If it's not dry seating, generally speaking, either your tire is going to be slightly too big and your wheel slightly too small. So I would suggest then in that case, try and put a bit of extra tubeless tape on to kind of bulk out the tire. But you don't want to do more than, I would say, 3 times around the wheel. Otherwise, you're going to compromise the fit of the tire and the rim. The most important thing above all of this is going to be pick a good sealant, which I know is hard because there's loads of ones out there. But personally, from experience, Effetto Mariposa makes a good one. Stan's Race is good. I really like the new Milkit stuff. I've been trying that. Squirt with the bead blocker works well. And the best sealant, but unfortunately really expensive, is Silca. I've never found anything works as well as that. Nothing comes close to it either. But there is a price penalty.
We should probably say Cade Media is sponsored by Silca. However, you are not.
No, but we use in the shop for all road. Yes.
You sell other sorts of sealants in the shop as well?
Yes, we do 3 different sealants in the shop at the moment. We do Squirt.
We have not forced him to say any of this.
We do Milkit, and then we use... But the basic thing is we've got access to all the sealants. We don't use it because anybody's giving us any deals or anything. We use it because we've tried all the different things, and that works best. I look back... We did 288 tubeless setups last year in the shop. There's only 2 of us in the shop, so it's a small shop.
So are you using the same sealant for road versus gravel?
No. So I use Silca for road, for all road going forward, just because that will seal at a much higher pressure. It's got strands of carbon fiber in it that makes like a little mini nest. So sealing-wise, it just works better. You can get away with all the other sealants for gravel, because the pressures aren't as high, so you don't have to worry as much, it'll seal. But on road, we just figured that most of the sealants just don't work nearly as well.
Yeah, it's an interesting point that probably a lot of people won't have even considered, is because road is a higher pressure, therefore, when it's trying to stop, or it's trying to literally block a hole in a tyre, there's obviously more air pressure just pushing it out rather than giving it a chance to seal. Yeah, that makes loads of sense.
And that's how all the race sealants work. So like Stan's Race has got an additive in it. Effetto Mariposa, you can add an additive. Squirt's got a thing called bead blocker in. But the downside to some of them are like Stan's Race, after they say you should only use it on race days. The rest of the time you should use normal sealant. So it gives you extra
Weird.
stuff. Yeah, it's thick.
Is there any errors that people make with like valves or anything like that?
The valves aren't too tight, or they aren't tight enough, or they're too tight. The problem with this is a bit of it's a minefield. I would generally recommend going for your first setup to a proper shop that's done a few of these.
Yeah.
When I say proper shop, I mean like a shop that's experienced in tubeless. And then so they can kind of see, and that'll be a good indication, because if they do it easily, it'll be easy for you to do it, or if they've got massive issues.
I guess as well, your well-respected local bike shop or well-reviewed local bike shop will probably have preferences or experiences themselves. For example, my tubeless setup, you've basically said, get these wheels, get these tires, use this sealant. And I just go, yeah, okay, cool. Because I know you are making a good decision on my behalf.
It makes my life easier.
Yeah.
I mean, we did the video we did last year with the JGM. We fitted Conti's new GP5000, because that's re-released them, onto the Zips, the 404s. And we fitted them with a track pump. It's just really easy. So, but it is it's a minefield. It's just the more modern wheels, when I say modern, released in the last 3 years, and the more modern tires also released in the last 2 to 3 years tend to work better together.
Actually, adding to that, these are your tips that you've told me. Another common error is you're not re-topping up your sealant. So you told me put a calendar reminder in your calendar for once a month to remind you to re-top up your sealant.
Yeah.
Because
every 3 months, yeah.
Sorry, every 3 months,
yes.
correct.
Yeah.
I haven't been riding on it, so I haven't been doing that. But there was at one point a calendar reminder in my phone every 3 months to remind me to re-top up my sealant. And what's the reason for that?
Generally, sealant dries out after about 3 months. There's different companies claim different things, but what we've noticed is, generally speaking, it's 3 months. And then, I don't know if I can, but I can list you a set of tires that just don't work tubeless very well. The old ones, so the old Vittorias didn't work very well. The new ones are excellent. The old Contis, some of them were too tight, so certain wheels. It's a bit of a thing. Schwalbe tires, generally speaking, I've never really struggled with. They always work well. We don't sell them as shop, but we've had customers bring them in. Terravale, really good for tubeless.
The other tip that you have given me is buy plugs. So ultimately, how do you... Ultimately, you can have the best setup. However, just like with tubes, you will occasionally get punctures that don't reseal or whatever, and you have to then be able to deal with it. And I think that's something that worries people as well, of how to deal with it.
That's actually the most important bit of tubeless. The biggest misconception of tubeless is that it's a foolproof solution. I can tell you now, it's not going to seal all punctures, but you don't need it to seal all punctures. If it seals one puncture, it's one time where you don't have to stop, flip your bike upside down next to the road, take the wheel off, get covered in oil and muck and everything like that. Try and get your tire off, in a tube out, find what's punctured it.
All right, we know how horrible it is to change a puncture.
So essentially, if it seals once, it saves you from that, and it's worth it. But generally speaking, with most sealants, the one we've run the longest was the Feta Mariposa and Stans. They're very similar to each other. And we would say for gravel, it will seal 8 out of 10 punctures. If it doesn't seal, make sure you have something that can plug it. So you get different plug tools. Loads of companies make them. We sell the Dynaplug ones just purely because that's the easiest. It's the least amount
I'm hearing a lot of hype on Dynaplug at the minute.
It's just easy. It's so incredibly easy. And that's, I think, the thing where you don't have to think. It's not teaching somebody how to remount the hole, how to thread the little thing through, force. It's literally stick it in, pull it out. It's done. And you can put several in. So that's easier. If it's more expensive, but trust me, next to the road, that's what you're going to want.
Do you carry a spare tube just in case?
No. I'm not going to advise you not to do that, because there is cases where if everything's gone wrong, you can. That's the beauty of tubeless. If everything goes horribly wrong and nothing works, you're just back to square one where you would have been with the tube. Fits in your inner tube. That's the only value I see out of these TPU inner tubes. That, like the Tubelitos and things like that, a few brands do them, is that they're really light to carry. So if you
just
carry
small,
one,
they're small.
small,
like, even regardless of the weight, they're so tiny when they're packed up that it just doesn't take up much space, does it?